All right, so I'm going to talk about Python and passing command line parameters to a Python program. There are several reasons why you would want to pass command line parameters to a Python program. One of them is to script. Another one is to make running that Python program easier when you have to pass parameters to it. When it usually asks, instead of asking stuff every time it's run, you can just program it to run with the parameters that you give it. So let's look at command line parameters. For example, if you have a command line interface open, so in this case I have Anaconda PowerShell, but you can have PowerShell on Windows, Terminal on Linux, or Terminal on Mac OS, or PowerShell or CMD on Windows. There's several. I have videos on how to work with the command line so you can find out which one do you have. So for example, I'm in the command line and I'm going to go to a directory called programs. So if I type cd programs, okay, what happens is I went to that directory right here, but what's important is cd is actually a program. It's actually an actual program in my computer, and I passed a parameter, a command line parameter, which contains the name of the directory or folder that I want to visit. Then I'm going to go to test, sorry. And again, I call the same program with a different parameter and it went to the correct directory. Now this is not a tutorial on CD. You can also look at a video for that. I have some. But for example, another one that I can do is Python, and I can pass this parameter minus and the word version. This is a parameter, minus version, it's just a string. And Python will look at that and will give me the version of Python that I'm actually running, right? So command line parameters can help you a lot. If you want to compile a Java file by hand, you use a special program called javac, and then you give it parameters. If you want to give parameters to Python, right, you can say Python -e, I believe, and then we give it 3 + 4. Oh, unknown parameter -e, sorry. So there's some parameters here. If you look at Python, it tells you what parameters. So it gets some options, -c command, mod file, etc. If you want to find what parameters a program can take, usually you can type the program and then put like a lousy parameter, and it will tell you how to use this thing. For example, Python, and if I give the parameter -h, it'll give me more help. Let's try that. Python -h, and I have a list of what to do with Python and its parameters. I'm going to call another program called clear that actually clears my terminal. So those are command line parameters. It's something that you put next to a program. How do we do this in Python? Well, Python comes with a library called sys that has a lot of system relevant functions. So if I start my program by saying import sys, right? And then look at this, I'm going to print sys.argv. This is the values of the arguments passed to my Python program. I'm going to save this guy as test_cmd.py. I'm saving it in the same programs, C programs test, exactly where I am in my command line. So let's go to the command line and let's call, Python test_cmd.py. So if I run this, I'm going to get a list with test_cmd.py, which is the name of the program that we just executed. Now, if I'm giving other parameters, Python test_cmd.py, and then I say hello 1 2 3 and 9.8. All right. What happens then is I'm printing a list, argv, the value of the arguments. These are called parameters or arguments to a program. So the value of the arguments passed to the Python program are: the first argument was test_cmd.py, the second argument was hello, then the third was 1, 2, 3, and 9.8 respectively. So to the program Python, I passed test.py, hello, 1, 2, 3, and 9.8. Now, all of these come in as strings. So remember, these are all in this vector, argv, in this list. So instead, I could print argv, and then I could say, print something like the, fourth parameter or argument is, and then I can say sys.argv 3. That's the fourth element, right? Because it starts counting from 0. So let's take a look at what this does. So I'm going to open my Anaconda and I'm going to execute the same command, Python test cmd, and then this bunch of things. And it'll say the fourth parameter is 2. That was the fourth, right? So 0, 1, 2, 3. That's the fourth parameter. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's 2. You see that? Now, what if I don't pass 4 parameters? So if I say Python test command.py hello, I'm going to get an error, right? And the error is list index out of range because I do not have 3 elements in my sys.argv. So you got to make sure if your program is going to receive certain parameters, you got to make sure that the user provides those parameters. Okay? So let's think of this. Let's say now that you want to use the numbers, but the numbers are coming in as strings. Okay? So let's create a little program that will take 2 numbers and we'll add them. This is very simple, right? So import sys, we're going to create a function, add. No need to create a function. But what we're going to do is we're going to get the first element, right? So we're going to get A is going to be sys.argv sub 1. Remember, argv sub 0 is always the name of your program because the first element you pass to the Python program. So sys.argv 1, that's going to be the first number. And B, we're going to have sys.argv 2. And then I'm going to print A plus B. All right. You might think that this will work, but the problem with this, if I go to my command line and I try to type this command line 2, 3, so I'm going to add 2 plus 3, is I get 23. Why is that? Well, because 2 and 3 are being passed as strings, not as integers. So I need to cast this to an integer. Okay? I need to cast these numbers to an integer. So sometimes if what you're looking for is not in the data type you want, you can cast them. So let's try it now. Let's do the same Python test command 2, 3, and you're going to get the right result, 5, right? So that is what you want to do. Now, you might want to receive parameters as strings, and you can say, you can use them as strings. You can have parameters that are numbers, and you can cast them as numbers, and you can do whatever. One of the string parameters, for example, might be a file name to open, and then you would proceed to open that. The one thing that you have to take care is that if you can say something like if sys.argv, the length of sys, right? So if the length of sys.argv, remember the first one, the 0 is always the program. So this is always greater than 1 if you call a program in Python. Okay, but if you say if the length sys.argv is less than 3, because you need 3 elements, the program name, the first and the second number. So if it's less than 3, okay, you might want to print something like usage Python test cmd.py number 1, number 2, right? Something like that, and then just you can break, or you can whatever, right? Then you can do else, and you can do that. So now what happens is that we save this, and if I go to my command line and I try to run this with 1 argument, for example, I'm going to get this. Usage, Python test cmd number 1, number 2. Oh, so it's 2 numbers. Okay, 34. All right, so then I get the result, which is 36. Now, there are some Python libraries like argparse that will help you manage help messages and casting from one parameter type to another, and that is totally fine. You can use the library. It's very powerful. There are other libraries that deal with parameters, but this is the basics of how to get parameters in Python from the command line. Thank you.